Welcome to this episode of the She Heals the World talk show. She Heals the World is a platform dedicated to empowering and inspiring heart-centered entrepreneurs to make a positive impact through their business. We have a treasure trove of inspiring stories, insightful conversations, and practical tips from leading women in the world of business for good. And today we have the amazing Allison Mann, who is joining us. And she is a licensed psychotherapist who specializes in body image and anxiety. Her desire to join the mental health field stemmed from a few experiences, one of the main experiences being losing all of her hair to alopecia universalis in childhood. Beyond her work as a therapist, she founded her business during graduate school to begin providing specific mental health resources for people with hair loss. She created the Hair Loss Diary, offers mental health coaching for hair loss, and much more. Welcome, Allison.
Thank
Another
you.
Allison. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, I know I just read your bio, but introduce a little bit more about yourself and tell us about your business journey.
Sure. Um, so like you read, my business journey started in graduate school, but I guess if I'm like really honest with myself, it started when I was a lot younger. I'd always imagined myself having a business and like developing a product. I never knew what it was, other than I knew I wanted to eventually have a private practice for therapy, but I didn't know that before that would happen, that I would actually decide to create this business specifically for hair loss. And it kind of just sort of came to me one day when I love journaling. I loved journals. And I did a series on my Instagram called Hair Loss Diaries, where I interviewed people with hair loss just to collect different stories so people could relate and find people who had a similar like, hair loss. We all have that underlying thread, but we all have different unique experiences with it. So I just wanted a collection of stories. And then like hit me one night. I was like, my first product should be the hair loss diary. Like I have the series, like I should make that. And it made sense. I was in grad school to be a therapist. I was like, I can make this. And so that is sort of how it started in grad school. I was like, that could be the first thing I do. Is I don't need to be graduated in order to make this product. I can do that now. And I knew that there was a big gap with mental health resources for hair loss because it's downplayed as like just hair, and people internalize that as, oh, I don't need support for that. So it started with a digital version of the Hair Loss Diary, which eventually I figured out how to make a hard copy. And then I graduated, obviously, and now I am a therapist. And then it evolved into coaching and therapy, as long as they're located in my state. But I wanted to go beyond the state I was licensed in for therapy. So that's how I eventually added on coaching so I could support more people. And it has sort of evolved from there.
I love that. Was there anything, I know you shared more about the creating the journal, but was there anything specifically that was a pivotal moment that led you down this path with the business piece? I love how you just took it and ran with it. I mean, you like the beautiful entrepreneurial story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A pivotal moment. I mean, growing up, I saw no like professionals who looked like me in like the mental health space. I know that they're there, they exist, but at that time I didn't see anyone like bald, showing up bald as a therapist. Again, I'm sure they were there, but not enough for me to be able to find one. And so for me that like signaled like an issue of like, how are we supposed to know that we can find support for this when we already feel like hair loss is so misunderstood, and it's already really scary to show up in a space like therapy and be open and vulnerable, and for the off chance that someone could misunderstand or invalidate it based on like the societal messaging around hair loss that says it's just hair, like it's fine, at least you're not like dying, it could be so much worse, right? So from a very young age I like saw a gap there, and that sort of instilled in me like, okay, I want to do something about that. So I guess that was like the earliest pivotal point for me. Just noticing that there was just this gap, and I wanted to be part of helping fill it.
I love that. And that really is a healing vision. I have worked with people in the entrepreneurial space for many, many years. And one of the main things that I've advocated for, especially people in the helping profession, is video, because you want to know that
Mhm.
you're comfortable with the other person, that you can somehow relate to them in one way or another. So I love that you took that and ran with it and did give
Yeah.
that representation, because it is really very important. How
Yeah.
would you say that your values shape your work?
Oh, everything is shaped by my values, I would say. And like often the work I'm doing with clients is helping them live value aligned. So it feels like very intuitive for like my business to feel very value aligned. Um, and I mean, I would say the premise of like my business and the work I do is that like uniqueness is beauty. Like my definition of beauty really stems from the fact that our brain does something very weird when we look at humans that it doesn't do with anything else in the world, right? Like when we look at nature, when we look at animals, like we think that flowers are cool because like none of them look the same. Like we think the patterns are cool, the colors are cool. If the flowers in the world were all exactly the same height, the same color, the same pattern, we suddenly like the beauty gets taken out of it, right? But when it comes to humans, all of a sudden we're like, no, 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 beauty means you're in a box, right? And so my value aligned definition of beauty is sort of the opposite of what society deems as beautiful, right? But that value aligned definition is sort of what informs all of what I do in my business and the mission of it. Um, and so like I would say that's the biggest way that like I use my values to inform what I do. Because yeah, we do something very odd for humans that we don't do with anything else.
And do you tie that into your marketing and your messaging as well when you're trying to brand yourself and your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it's so important to me when I'm showing up online that like I'm not a fan of filters. I mean, part of that is like my thesis in college was about like the impact of social media on like body image, mental health. And so like I know like how filters and Photoshop and all these things like play a role into that. And to me, like it just doesn't feel good because again, that's not part of my definition of beauty to like fit the standard, right? So when I'm showing up and I'm marketing my services, like I don't, other than like professional photos I've gotten taken where like the photographer like does their own thing and then they send it back to you. I don't edit, I don't use filters, I don't use Photoshop, I don't do any of that because to me that would not be aligned with my business. I show up as I am. Just the other day, I made a post on my therapy account about how I've been dealing with like eczema flare ups in my face and like swollen eyelids and like how important it was for me to show up during that time rather than wait until my face got back to normal, right? Because that's not what I want to show. I don't want to show this like perfection and that your body looks the same all the time because it doesn't. It fluctuates. Things are going to happen. And so the way that I market myself and show up, especially on social media, is very much aligned with that.
And have you gotten a lot of positive reinforcement to continue that? Like, have you had people reach out to you about that in particular?
Yeah, I don't, it's interesting. I don't think I necessarily have people reach out saying, like, I love that you don't use filters, right? But I definitely have people that reach out and appreciate the fact that I'm just like honest and I don't just share like the happy things, I share like the very real things. And I'm constantly reminding people on my page, like, yeah, what you see right now might look like I was in this space of confidence and acceptance for so long, but it actually wasn't. Like, for most of my life, that's not where I was. And so I think that authenticity kind of goes similarly along with like not using the editing and those types of things. And so that part I get more reinforcement about that they like that I show up and I share the realness, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, so yeah, there's definitely some feedback there.
I love that. I love that. As I have my beautiful lit virtual background. Um, but that's why I think all of it, especially when we're building businesses, we do have to take what aligns with us and what makes us feel good in the moment so that we can get our message across. For me, like knowing that this is the background, like this makes me happy. And so
Yeah,
then from there, I can be more of my authentic self versus if it's
right,
gloomy right now where I'm at. As we're recording this, it's very, very dark and gloomy outside, and that does not make me feel so fantastical. And so I'm not going to come across in the same way. So I like that
right.
you take that into consideration.
Yeah.
What challenges did you face starting out, and how did you overcome them
Mm,
with your business in particular?
yeah. I guess at the very beginning, I mean, they don't teach you anything about marketing
Right?
therapy school, like so nothing. It's becoming a bigger conversation online now, like between therapists, how like that is an issue. And everyone's there for different reasons. I always knew I wanted to do private practice. I always knew I wanted to have a business. So at first that really was the biggest challenge. I'm like, Googling up and down, left and right, like figuring out what to do. Like when I was trying to figure out the journals, the reason I started digitally was because I had zero idea how to make a physical product. Like that was just not something where would have learned that? And so at first I really genuinely thought, I was like, I'm never going to be able to make this a physical product because how would I figure that out? So I'm just going to make it a digital one and like call it a day. But the perfectionist in me was like, no, I need to make this a hard copy. And so I did a lot of Googling, a lot of figuring out like where can you like self-publish, where can you like do print on demand, like learning about like what is print on demand versus like buying like stock. So like that was, I would say, the biggest challenge. For everything I've done, I've had to essentially learn on my own. The amount of like free courses I've taken just to like understand like every ad that like popped up in my feed, like talking about like marketing, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try that. Like anything I could do, I would try, just because you're not taught that in the helping professions, which is a shame. I think there's a weird messaging around like helping professions, like shouldn't, you're just there to help, like you shouldn't want to make money, but we all need to make a living. And so that itself too was like something I had to overcome, that messaging of like, I'm allowed to be a helping professional, help people, and make a good living. That
Yes.
was another message I had to overcome too.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that. I am a former social worker. I was a social worker for a very, very long time. And when you're helping people who are living through a lot of challenges, then you feel bad and you feel like wanting more, trying to like improve yourself is somehow taking away from someone else. And yet at the same time, realizing that when we really are able to fill our own cup, again, just even having this background, like I'm able to give more and be more present with you and let your message shine because I feel better about myself. So it's a very tricky world to navigate when it comes to that messaging. And it's not just in therapy. It's especially it's still prevalent, I think, in the coaching space as well. You have one extreme or the other.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Yes. What strategies you just mentioned, like really, bootstrapping and figuring things out on your own, but what strategies would you say have had the biggest impact on your success?
I would say most of it has been like social media oriented, because for me, like because it's so niche, like hair loss, like baldness, especially for women, like it's very niche. Like even if you do like Google or Facebook ads, you can't target like interest of like hair loss or alopecia. Those are not keywords they are able to target. Um,
Really?
yeah, unless it's changed in the last few months. But
Okay.
but every time I've tried, it's not something you can use. So it really took like first just building community on social media, but like I was building community far before I ever knew I was going to turn anything into like support for the community. And that was the biggest thing that helped me, like, and that authenticity that I brought to social media starting back in like high school when I started posting YouTube videos, I think is what gave me the foundation to actually then create things and for it to resonate with people. And it gave me a really good understanding of what do people in my community need, because for so many years I'd already been connecting with so many people and understanding needs. And I'm a person part of this community too. So I also understand that part. And so that was like the initial like foundation, was just building a community. And then from there, like now to me, it's really just about consistency. I make sure I show up consistently online and that my messaging continually like aligns with my values. And some of it's trial and error. Like I'm the type of person, like if something goes bad, like a post I thought would do well, doesn't do well, like I am constantly looking at like, okay, what about that maybe didn't do well? And trying again. I think that's the other biggest thing, is like being willing to try again, even when you don't get the right results. And I think that has led to most of my success, is just like, okay, that didn't work. It's okay. We're going to try something else. Like it's not over. Like we're just going to keep trying because something will eventually work. So yeah, sort of the aspects of like community, building relationships with people in your own community, and continuing to try and showing up consistently, I would say, are the biggest things that I use.
When it comes to marketing tactics that worked well,
Mm.
is it having private conversations? Is it letting people reach out to you? Is it email marketing? Is it strictly social media showing up? Like what's been your success secret?
A little bit of both. I would say the first time I ran like my like signature coaching program, it was all social media, and I would use like polls on stories, and if people like clicked on the poll, then I would send them a direct message. And that is the way that I got initially most of those clients in my first year of that program. The second year I did it, I ended up speaking at the National Alopecia Areata Foundation conference, and that obviously was something that like directly helped me connect to community, and my topic very much related to like what I help people do in my program, right? So that also generated more leads, right? The second time I did it, I actually changed the process of how people apply rather than just like the direct messaging and then like an intro call. I did like an application process, and I saw that like created more of like a sense of urgency around like, oh, this is a open as a one-time thing. I have to apply during this period. Um, and I actually had a lot more success with that. So I plan to use that next time. And I did a little bit of email marketing for that too. So the first time around, a lot of social media. Now I would say I use a combination of some email marketing, some like direct community stuff, like speaking. Um, and I still use like DMing and messaging on social media too, or like polls on my story, because those for me get the most engagement. I find it hard for people to reach out for something so vulnerable. So when you give them the opportunity to say like, do you need help with XYZ, and give them the opportunity to say like, yes, I would like to learn more, or whatever it is, and they can just, all they have to do is click on it and then I do the rest. I found that to be good too.
Yes, I can definitely see that. I've had that conversation with many people over the years, especially when it's you're sharing a post and you're asking for engagement, but people don't want anyone else to publicly see that
Mm-hmm.
you can relate to it, that they're struggling with it. They just
Mm-hmm.
want to they don't want to share those challenges with the world. So that's a
Yeah.
really great strategy. How often do you post on social media, or do you kind of let it vary, especially as a
Yeah.
you mentioned you identify as a recovering perfectionist.
Yeah.
I do as well. So I can kind of be all or nothing. Like I'm like sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. So what are your strategies with that?
So it definitely varies a little bit. Right now, I'm at a point where I've been trying to be more consistent on my therapy account. So on there, I try to do 5 days a week. I try to do Monday through Friday. Keyword is try, because I found that when I have like too specific of a goal and I don't meet it, then that just backfires for any other perfectionists out there. Um, and then on my main account, which is like my hair loss focus account, since I've done more work in building that one up already, now I usually just do 3 times a week there. Occasionally more, occasionally less, depending on like if I see a trend that's like really easy to make and it takes me like 3 seconds to film the video. Or if like this past week when I've been dealing with like this like eczema flare up and like my eyes have been swollen, it's been harder for me to like film things because my face is uncomfortable. And I've like given myself the space to be like, I don't have to post 3 times a week, or I can just post like B-roll clips that I've had in my vault, right? So I adjust based on that, but I try to do overall 3 times on my hair loss account and 5 times on my therapy account, because right now my therapy account is newer in terms of me building it. So I'm trying to see if I give that one a little bit more attention, how that will do marketing wise.
And is Instagram your favorite place to hang out?
Yeah, Instagram has always been. I don't know. I'm just not a TikToker. I know some people have had great success on TikTok. I'm not one of those people. My videos have always done well. For example, my like biggest video was an eyebrow video I did last September 23, where I tried on eyebrows for the first time, like tattoo eyebrows. And that video got 10 million, nearly 10 million on Instagram and only like 35,000 on TikTok. So whatever I
No, fantastic numbers. Let's just acknowledge your success.
I
That's a
mean, yeah, that was
fantastic.
the first time I hit over a million on any video. But like just the stark difference in how much better it did for me on Instagram than TikTok just like proved my feeling of like, yeah, I'm better at Instagram, I guess. So the Instagram is definitely my favorite.
I love that. I love that. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
To start, and this goes to the actually like my own, like what I've learned in my own recovering from perfectionism is that you just have to start without knowing everything. I think at first I got really stuck with like, oh, I can't make a journal. Like I don't know anything about selling. I don't know anything about making a product. I was like, then I like took a step back and was like, well, but I've had hair loss my whole life. I'm in school to be a therapist. I'm the most qualified person to make a product like this. Like, what do you mean I have to wait till I have it all figured out until I start making it? So I was like, no, I'm just going to start. I'm just going to get on Canva, start figuring out what I want the pages to be, what I want included in it. So I would say the biggest thing is you just have to start without feeling like you have the whole roadmap, which can feel really scary. But I found that anything I've been successful with has been because I just went for it, even though I didn't have the full plan. And then you can figure it out along the way.
Yeah, it definitely shows in your ambition and the success that you've had. How has mentorship impacted your journey?
Oh, so mentorship for me goes way back because when I was in elementary school, which is when I started losing my hair at like age 3, but I've been bald since I was like 6. I was in a, as most alopecia areata happens for people, it goes through like a patchy phase. Sometimes it grows back, sometimes it doesn't. So for a few years, it was like patchy, came back, fall out, came back, fall out until I was about 6 and it was all gone. And my elementary school did an assembly called Locks of Love, where people donate their hair for people with kids with cancer, for people with alopecia, whatever it is. But the teacher who led this assembly when I had lost all my hair in like first grade asked me if I would want to speak at the assembly. And as like a first grader, I was like, uh, part of me was like, that feels really scary. But the other part of me was like, that makes me really special. So I was like, I took the challenge and I was like, sure. And so she helped me like develop the speech. And like that moment, like that teacher specifically really instilled in me that like my story had value and my experience had value. It wasn't just like some like weird thing. It like had a lot of value that I could bring to people. And I have had people like way years after into like adulthood being like, I remember when you spoke in elementary school and all these things. So, and I went to a big school. There was like hundreds of people at my school. So to do that at that age, like that teacher like really instilled one, that my story had value, which sort of carried me through like the middle school, high school years that were like not as easy when you're a bald woman. And then after that, I would say the other main form of mentorship that I had is one of my current supervisors at the practice that I am working at. Because there's always a feeling of like when you're different of like, is that going to like hamper my ability like in a field? Is that going to make people not want to work with me? And she really showed me like, no, that's actually going to help you attract more ideal clients, the way that you show up like this. Like, sure, it's not going to be for everyone, but the people that you work with are probably going to really resonate. And it's probably going to like enhance the therapeutic relationship, which in turn, that's the biggest predictor of success in therapy, right? So it's actually more a strength than a weakness. And I've learned so much from her, and she does some social media stuff too. So that was helpful for me to see, to be like, oh, okay, I'm also allowed to be a therapist who's online, because that was another thing that I worried about as someone who like started doing social media before I was a therapist, to be like, am I allowed to do that? And so to have her show me that like, yeah, you definitely can. And also like the way you show up is not a weakness. It's definitely a strength.
I love that. Both of those stories are very, very impactful. And I think it's gives people hope that when we
Yeah.
don't feel like we fit into the box we're supposed to fit in, that it's actually a superpower. So I really, and I like that.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
for sharing that. How do you handle setbacks and what lessons have you learned?
Mm. So I handle them a lot better now than I did before.
It's the
Um,
growth, right? It's the growth
right.
journey.
Yeah. So I think before like I said, the perfectionism of like, oh, this means like I'm a failure, like I don't know what I'm doing. It showed up a lot when something wouldn't go right. Especially at the beginning of social media, like it took me a long time to build any sort of community. And I would always feel like, okay, what am I doing wrong? Maybe I'm just like not good at this. I don't know. Um, but the thing was that even though I felt that, I never stopped doing it. I showed up when I was scared. I think that's the biggest thing I learned from setbacks, is that like if I don't show up even when I'm scared, then I'm not going to see like the fruit of like all what I'm doing. And so I remember even when I was posting on YouTube, I was terrified. I told like 2 people, and I was like, I swear to God, if you tell anyone, I'll be so mad, because I was scared of being like bullied. I didn't want other people in my school to find it. Um, so that was like the beginning of like feeling like, what am I doing and how do I do this and how do I even show up authentically? But the thing is, I did it scared, and I took that and I used it for everything moving forward, right? So like when something doesn't go well, or like maybe I'm not getting as many clients as I thought I would, or whatever it is, that makes anyone nervous, because they're like, what am I doing wrong? But the only thing that I've learned that will get me to the other side of that is if I keep going, even in the midst of feeling nervous, right? And talking to people, right? Like I said, I had that supervisor. She's she does marketing stuff too for similar things. And so like I'll ask her. I think asking for help is important. You can't do everything on your own. And I think I learned that too when I described in the beginning, like doing a lot of like figuring it out on my own. I think I learned pretty quickly that like it's okay to ask for help and you shouldn't do everything alone. Like it's totally okay to have that drive and to do some things alone. But I think most of my setbacks now I will reach out for help if I need it. And I also won't let it deter me from like trying something new. I have like a weird sense of not like calm around setbacks now, but in a way, like I have this like now this internal dialogue of that's okay. Like I'm gonna figure something else out. And eventually it's gonna work. And that I mean that took trying things scared many, many times for me to get to that place now of like that trust in myself that I can eventually figure it out. Uh, but that's sort of what the setbacks look like now. I'm like, either I'm going to ask for help or I'm going to find something else to do and we'll go from there. So it's kind of like not getting ahead of yourself, not catastrophizing, but like just sticking with it.
I like that. I like that a lot. The people who are in my life who can create that sense of calm when it does feel like what's going to happen? How are we going to figure that out? They're just it's the grounding that we think we all need, and that's
Yeah.
what lets us keep walking forward. All right. For this question, one of our last questions, but not the very last. What does healing the world mean to you?
To me, healing the world means getting to a place where more people feel comfortable showing up in their authentic confidence, not what they think confidence means based on like society standards, but being able to know exactly who they are and feel firm in standing in that, regardless of like whatever boxes society says you're supposed to stand in. Because I think I forget who said this quote, but it's one of my favorites. That like being yourself is one of the most rebellious things you can do. And I fully believe that it is. It's really scary, especially if you have any sort of visible difference. It probably feels 10 times more rebellious. But really, for anyone, like being yourself is the most rebellious thing you can do in a world with all these beauty standards and expectations that are rooted in just like like the beauty industry making billions of dollars. It's not necessarily rooted in the fact that they want us to be our most authentic selves. And so to me, that's what like healing the world would look like is people feeling like they can stand in their authentic confidence and feel good about it rather than feel scared.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
The last question is, how can our audience support your work?
Ooh. You can by either following me, by engaging with my content. My two pages are Allison_man, one L in Allison, two N's in man.
Right, you have to specify with the Allison name. Yes.
A million ways to spell Allison. It's crazy. And then my therapy account is Aid by Ali, AIDBYALI. So by following, engaging with my content, if you're someone with hair loss or you're someone in New York looking for a therapist for body image or anxiety, you're more than welcome to reach out. I also sell some products like sweatshirts, the diaries, and I donate 5% of net profits to either mental health organizations or the National Alopecia Areata Foundation. So if you're looking to like buy yourself a gift or someone else a gift that has like meaning behind it, my website is also aidbyally.com and I have some things on there.
I said it. That was the last question, but I have one more question. How
Sure.
did you come up with that as your handle?
Oh, it's pretty funny. When I was, and this is goes to like what support means in like an entrepreneurial world. Like I had parents who were very supportive. They didn't know what I was doing online, but they were like, sure, go ahead. And there was this therapist who created a course called Instagram for Therapists. And I was only a sophomore in my BSW degree, so undergrad, not even graduate school yet. And I was like, I need to take this course. And so my mom got it for me. I was very thankful. And she like told us about like how to create a handle. And so the only like helping word that I could think of with A was aid. However, it's possible that in the next year or so, it might be switching. because I plan on having my private practice somewhat soon and like merging the private practice with my current resources. And I don't know if I should give away the name for that, but there's a word that I maybe have said many times throughout this interview that will probably switch to being it, but the word Aid by Ally will always have a place in my heart, even if it doesn't say my brand name forever. But yes, it was from this Instagram for Therapists course that I took when I was, I don't know, like 19 or 20.
I love that. Yeah, when I first saw your name, I was like, what? How did she come up with that? I'm very, very curious behind the story for that. So I love that. So now, as people can support you by following you, they can also watch the journey to see the new things coming and the potential new names and all of the expansion as your work continues to heal the world.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. I'm sure it'll be helpful for our listeners. I learned.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the She Heals the World talk show. To find out how you can grow your purpose-driven business, visit us at www.shehealstheworld.com.